I had always considered myself a cautious person, but nothing could have prepared me for that day. My name is Annabelle, and I was 16 when this happened, back in my high school in the UK. At first, it seemed like a normal day, though even then I felt a faint sense of unease lingering in the air. The corridors were unusually quiet after lunch, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes every step sound louder than it should. I had just downed a large cup of orange juice from the cafeteria, the kind that spills if you're not careful, and my stomach was telling me I needed the bathroom immediately. My geography teacher frowned when I asked to leave, clearly annoyed since we had just returned from break, but he reluctantly waved me off. The hallways were empty, the echo of my shoes against the polished floor bouncing back at me. I pushed open the double doors into the cafeteria, the place completely deserted except for the faint smell of disinfectant and leftover food. My footsteps echoed across the linoleum tiles. I moved carefully, aware that anyone who happened to be in the building at this hour would be able to see me clearly. But that thought didn't bother me too much. After all, I assumed no one unusual would be around. I found the bathroom, relieved to finally step inside, and did my business quickly. Even then, the quiet seemed unnatural, almost suffocating. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. My own nervous face stared back at me, pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a normal school day, and my imagination was getting the better of me. When I stepped back into the cafeteria, I immediately noticed him, a man sitting at one of the tables, leaning forward slightly. He wasn't supposed to be there. I froze. His presence didn't feel right. He was too old to be a student, too out of place to be staff, yet he wore a lanyard with an ID card, and the scanner by the doors had allowed him to enter. My heart skipped a beat, but I tried to remain calm. "Hey," he said casually. I squealed, an involuntary sound of pure shock, and instinctively took a step back. He laughed softly. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you." The calmness in his voice did nothing to settle my racing heart. He seemed ordinary at first glance, yet something about him was off. That ID card hanging from his neck, flipped over so that the face and name were hidden, sent a shiver down my spine. He asked me for help with his work stuff, claiming he needed to carry a few bags from his car into the school. My instinct screamed at me not to go. Every horror story I had ever heard about strangers pretending to be someone trustworthy came rushing to mind. But in that moment, I did what any polite 16-year-old would do. I agreed, assuming he was a teacher, someone I could trust. We walked in silence through the foyer toward the car park. The bushes blocked the view until we were almost there. The quiet of the empty school grounds amplified the sound of our footsteps. Each step felt heavier, like the air itself was trying to warn me. Then I saw the back seat. Two men crouched there, waiting. My blood ran cold, my body locked in terror, but a surge of adrenaline kicked in, and I yanked free when he tried to grab me. I ran. My sneakers squeaked against the concrete, echoing in the still air as I raced back toward the school. Even now, years later, I remember that panic like it happened yesterday. The fear, the desperation, the realization of how close I came to something horrifying. That day changed everything. I've never forgotten the feeling of being hunted, even in a place that should have been safe. I froze in my tracks when I saw the blue car parked at the far end of the lot. My heart was pounding so hard I was certain the driver could hear it from inside. At first, I tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe it was just a parent waiting for their child or a teacher unloading some supplies. But deep down, I knew something was very wrong. The car wasn't just parked. It was almost hidden, tucked behind the overgrown hedges that blocked it from plain sight. The shadows inside the vehicle seemed darker than they should have been. As we approached, my stomach twisted into knots. That man, the one I had assumed was a teacher, motioned toward the trunk. "I need you to help me with a couple of bags," he said. His tone was casual, almost too casual, but my gut screamed danger. I had no reason to trust him, yet my mind struggled to reconcile the image of a teacher asking for help with the creeping dread building in my chest. When we reached the car, I noticed the movement inside the back seat. Two figures were crouched in the shadows, barely visible but unmistakable. My body went cold. Every horror story I had ever heard flooded my mind. My legs felt like lead, my lungs tightened, and for a moment, I could do nothing but stare. Then one of the men scrambled out. His movements were frantic, aggressive, and in that instant, I realized I was in genuine danger. The man I had trusted reached out, grabbing my arm. Panic surged through me. I was 5'2", small and light, but adrenaline transformed my body into something capable of extraordinary strength. With a burst of energy, I wrenched my arm free, breaking his grip, and sprinted toward the school doors. Heavy footsteps followed me. I could hear the chase, the sound of multiple pursuers pounding the concrete behind me. My mind screamed, "Don't look back. Keep running." Every instinct told me that if I slowed down, I wouldn't make it. The automatic glass doors were ahead, and I flung myself toward them. They resisted for what felt like an eternity before sliding open, allowing me to slip inside. I didn't stop. I bolted across the lobby, past the security cameras that now seemed like silent witnesses to my terror. The cafeteria was my only safe haven, and I reached it just in time to see the man trying to follow me, his hand still outstretched. I collided with the barista, a kind woman I barely knew, and gasped out what had happened. She didn't panic. Instead, she grabbed my hand, guided me to a nearby teacher's office, and called both my parents and the police. It felt like a lifetime before the authorities arrived, but once they did, relief washed over me in waves. The two men in the back seat of the car were caught on the parking lot cameras, and it was clear that they had planned the abduction. It turned out that the man who had lured me had managed to enter the building using a dropped lanyard, a student's ID left outside, which allowed him to bypass the security system. The fact that he had flipped the ID over to hide his face was chilling. He wasn't a teacher at all, just a predator exploiting the system and my trust. For weeks afterward, I couldn't return to school. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blue car, the shadowed figures, and the man's hands trying to grab me. Therapy helped, slowly, but the memory of that day lingers. Even now, years later, I can remember the suffocating fear, the echo of my footsteps in the empty hallway, and the adrenaline that allowed me to escape. It was the scariest day of my life, and the one that taught me the importance of trusting my instincts above all else. Even in places that seem safe, danger can hide in the shadows, waiting for the moment when you let your guard down. That blue car, those men, and that seemingly helpful teacher are forever etched in my memory, a chilling reminder of how quickly life can change in a heartbeat. I burst through the automatic doors into the school foyer, my heart hammering like a drum in my chest. The glass walls reflected my panicked expression back at me, fractured and distorted by the morning sunlight filtering through. I pressed myself against the nearest pillar, trying to catch my breath and make sense of what had just happened. The sound of my sneakers squeaking against the tile was deafening, echoing through the empty space. For a terrifying moment, I thought I could still hear them. The men chasing me, their footsteps heavier than mine, threatening to close the distance in an instant. I scanned the area frantically. The foyer was deserted except for the security desk, a few scattered chairs, and the lifeless hum of fluorescent lights above. Relief washed over me when I noticed a teacher heading toward the cafe attached to the library. I sprinted toward her, desperation giving wings to my feet. The woman looked at me with immediate concern, her eyes widening as she took in my disheveled appearance and the sheer terror etched across my face. "Annabelle, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. I could barely form words, my throat tight with panic. Finally, I gasped out a shaky explanation, telling her about the blue car, the men hiding inside, and the man I had assumed was a teacher who had tried to grab me. Every word made my hands tremble, but she listened carefully, nodding and offering reassurance. Without hesitation, she guided me to a nearby office where other staff were already gathering. Phones were dialed, parents contacted, and the police were en route. The reality of the situation hit me in full force. What could have been a terrifying tragedy had been narrowly avoided, and yet the fear lingered in my bones. I felt the adrenaline drain from my body, leaving me trembling and weak, but grateful to be alive. While I waited for my parents and the authorities, I kept replaying every detail in my mind, trying to make sense of it. How had they known I was alone? How had the man managed to get inside the school? The discovery of the dropped lanyard as their entry point only deepened the sense of vulnerability. It was a reminder that even places designed to be safe could be infiltrated by those with sinister intent. Eventually, the police arrived, and I was guided to recount everything that had happened. They were thorough, questioning every movement, every decision, every second of that terrifying sequence. They assured me that the individuals involved had been apprehended and that the lanyard had been confiscated as evidence. Despite their calm professionalism, I could still feel the lingering echoes of fear, the sense that danger had lurked just inches from my life. After giving my statement, I was escorted home by my parents. Every step felt surreal. The streets looked familiar, the sunlight warm and comforting, yet a shadow still hung over my mind. Even in the safety of my own home, I couldn't shake the image of the blue car, the hidden figures, and the hands that had tried to seize me. The trauma clung to me like a second skin, invisible but ever present. In the weeks that followed, I attended therapy sessions to process the experience. Each session peeled back layers of anxiety and fear, helping me regain control over the memory that had threatened to consume me. Writing down my experience, telling the story aloud, became a way to reclaim my power. It reminded me that survival wasn't just about physical escape. It was about confronting the lingering terror and refusing to let it define me. Even now, years later, I sometimes replay that morning in my mind. The empty hallway, the hidden men, the blue car. They are etched into my memory as a permanent reminder of how fragile safety can be. But the experience also taught me resilience, vigilance, and the critical importance of trusting my instincts. I survived because I acted, because I refused to freeze completely, and because the world sometimes provides help when you need it most. The days following that terrifying encounter felt surreal, as if I were living in a fog between reality and nightmare. I couldn't return to school for a couple of weeks, and each morning I woke with a knot in my stomach, half expecting to see the blue car waiting outside or those shadowy figures lurking in the halls. The experience left me hyper-aware of every sound, every movement, and every stranger who crossed my path. Even the familiar hallways of my school, once ordinary and safe, now seemed foreign and dangerous. Therapy became a lifeline. My sessions with a kind, patient counselor helped me untangle the knot of fear that had taken residence in my mind. We talked about adrenaline, panic responses, and coping mechanisms, but mostly, we focused on reclaiming the sense of safety that had been stripped away in a single terrifying moment. Each session was exhausting, both emotionally and physically. But slowly, I began to notice small victories. The ability to walk down a hallway without looking over my shoulder, the capacity to sit in a classroom without my hands shaking, the courage to speak to strangers without that immediate, paralytic fear. The police investigation continued, and I learned that the two men in the blue car had a history of criminal behavior, and the teacher lured me as part of an attempted abduction scheme. The fact that they had planned everything, studied the school's routines, and exploited the security system made my survival feel almost miraculous. My parents were both furious and relieved. Their protective instincts clashed with their pride in my ability to escape. I could see it in their eyes. They wanted to shield me from the world, yet they knew I had done what was necessary to save myself. I returned to school gradually, escorted by my parents for the first few days. Every step back into that building was a test of courage. I felt my pulse spike when I saw other students wandering the corridors, every shadow and corner a potential threat. But each successful day, each hour that passed without incident, helped rebuild my confidence. Slowly, I began to reclaim the ordinary joys of school life, laughing with friends, focusing on lessons, even enjoying the familiar cafeteria smells that had once seemed comforting. Despite the trauma, I also discovered a new sense of empowerment. I realized that my instincts had saved me, that my quick thinking and determination had allowed me to escape a truly dangerous situation. It was a lesson in the importance of trusting yourself, even when fear threatens to paralyze you. I carried that lesson forward, more cautious, certainly, but also more aware of my own resilience. Writing down my story became part of my healing process. Each word I typed, each memory I revisited, was a confrontation with the terror I had faced. I shared it with close friends, my family, and eventually in a safe public forum, hoping that my experience might help others recognize warning signs and trust their instincts in dangerous situations. The act of storytelling transformed fear into awareness and panic into understanding. Even now, years later, I remember the blue car, the men hiding inside, the hands that tried to grab me. But I also remember the teacher who helped me, the police who acted swiftly, and my own courage in the moment that mattered most. That day taught me that fear is real, but so is strength. That even when the world seems dark and threatening, survival, resilience, and hope can shine through. And though the memory will never fully fade, it no longer paralyzes me. Instead, it reminds me that I am capable of escaping danger, facing fear, and reclaiming control over my life. One step, one decision, one heartbeat at a time.